All right. All right, welcome back everyone again to another event on Crypto Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the cause of poverty. So I think we have notes from people from last week. Let's see if there's agreement or disagreement on the cause of poverty. Sorry for the little delay. I was having some technical issues. Let me just go and share my screen with you guys and move on into that. Okay, let me do this here and here. Okay. Close this window and share here. There we go. Let me know if you guys can see everything. So can you see my screen? Okay, good. So as always, we start with a big disclaimer. Whatever we produce across all platforms, and when I say we, see anyone connected or related to Crypto Vagabonds, everything we produce is for informational, educational, entertainment purpose only. No one at Crypto Vagabonds is or intend to become a financial or tax advice. Whatever you do with your money is your responsibility. This Crypto Talk does occur every Wednesday at 7 p.m. CEST. And if you do not know what time that is a time in Amsterdam. If this is your first time at a Crypto Talk, you'll be receiving an email with a link where you can book a consultation with me. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Monday to Friday on Clubhouse. So again, no financial advice, no tax advice. The only advice I can give to you that can be considered financial advice is educate yourself well before investing on whatever it is that you intend to invest on. So everyone in the crypto space is known for their expertise. Some are NFT experts, some are blockchain experts. I'm known as a risk-averse guy, and that's because I have one rule. If there's a doubt, there is no doubt. Meaning if I do have a doubt about something, there is no doubt I'm not moving any further with investment. So today we're going to be talking about the cause of poverty. And as I already mentioned, we did discuss that, or actually we asked people to think what was the cause of poverty last week. So by the end of this, we're going to be seeing what the agreements and disagreements are in terms of the cause of poverty. The approach we're going to be taking today is going to be the cause of poverty to nations, and then we're going to go to the individual. So first of all, we're going to define what is poverty, what prevents certain nations from thriving, and again, we're going to be focused on nations being poorer than others. And also going to be looking at what nourishes wealth, what is required, what is the laying foundation that enables wealth to occur. So the first question is, of course, what is poverty? And there's a lot of definitions, and this definition I'm going to share with you guys is my own definition. I don't think there's any book that endorses this definition I'm sharing with you guys. So my definition of poverty is quite simple. Poverty to me is the inability to trade. That's how I see poverty. As long as you are able to trade, you are not poor. Is when you become unable to trade. We are unable to acquire a job or sell whatever you produce. When you're unable to trade and acquire monetary value, that to me is a definition of poverty. A poor person has much more limited trading ability than someone who is wealthy. So to me, that is the definition of poverty, the inability to trade. As long as you are able to trade, produce goods and services and trade freely, you don't stay poor. The chances are you're going to become wealthy or at least escape poverty. Now, from that perspective, what prevents poverty, what prevents nations from thriving is heavy regulations. And I just want to give an example here, what I mean by that. There are some nations on earth that takes 2 years for you to open a business. Whereas in the US, you can open a business in 20 minutes. Also, the amount that has to be paid for you to be able to open a company in certain places are much harder. And if you look at, for instance, as long there is a company or there is a business or entrepreneur generating jobs, people escape poverty. A lot of people say, oh, this is going to bring a lot of jobs. This is going to promote employment. So if you see as people being able to trade their time initially in exchange for money, the basic trade, and if you see business being open as a potential increase of hiring people, then heavy regulations in a country where it takes 2 years for you to open a business makes that very difficult. I think is Senegal or some places in Africa that takes 2 years for you to kind of open a business, whereas 20 minutes in Europe. So when you look at the freedom charts on some websites, you're going to see that the easier it is to open a business, the less poverty there is in that nation, in that country. So besides time, of course, barriers of opening business, because remember, if you want to open a business, you're going to have to get some form of paperwork done. And the higher that barrier, the more difficult it is for that nation or people in that country to thrive, because they have to go to a lot of loops and hoops to be able to open their business, and therefore being able to maybe hire someone else or be able to make money on their own. And another thing that happened is most of those places, they do have also higher taxation, or because they're unable to open their business, they become unable to compete. And the easier it is for people to open business and the more competitive the market, that lowers the prices, bringing prices down and enhancing the possibility of escaping poverty. If the prices of everything you consume drops, then the chances are it's easier for you to overcome poverty. And the more a market is competitive, the more prices will come down and the better the goods and services will become. So that is one other way to measure poverty. What is the quality of the goods and services that you're acquiring? So if you have chances to get greater goods, products, and services with greater quality for less money, that is a way for you to escape poverty. One good example I can give to you is in Brazil. When I'm in Europe, I can buy a MacBook Pro, which is, I think it is a superior computer than the ones produced in Brazil, for instance. And I can buy one here for like $700, $1,000 in Europe. The cheapest MacBook Pro in Brazil, the cheapest MacBook in Brazil will be around $1,700 to $1,800. Now, that extra taxation on anything that comes from abroad is there to defend, so to speak, the producers of computer in Brazil. But then what happened is it forces the entire nation to have an inferior tool, therefore inferior ability to compete. So in that sense, I see heavy taxation on import or products coming from abroad is another way that in which a nation stifle competitiveness within the rest of the world. So that is another thing that I see being a great cause of poverty, when rules and regulations kind of stifle or hindrance the ability of you to be competitive. And of course, we just mentioned taxation on imports is one thing that prevents poverty or a nation from escaping poverty. And the heavier the taxation, the more difficult it is for that nation to become, or the people in that nation to escape poverty. And you can see this with several nations. One example I can give to you is New Zealand. New Zealand, people may not know this, but in the 80s, New Zealand was one of the poorest country on earth, comparable almost to, I would say, India or Sri Lanka. And the reason was because of the heavy taxation that there was in New Zealand. And New Zealand, in about 3 to 6 months, they cut down 80% to 90% of all taxation and all government regulation. And that made the country be able to thrive and to become wealthy. So wealthy that most people, when I say about New Zealand, they are not aware that New Zealand had that problem. So this is another thing that really prevents people or a nation from escaping poverty. Imagine you open a business and then you have this business partner that is not helping you with anything. Much the contrary, is asking you to jump through extra loops and hoops to open your business. And in the end, that business partner is saying to you, 50% of whatever you produce is mine. So that kind of business partnership is one thing that really prevents people, discourage people from opening business, and therefore stifle the nation from being able to prosper or to thrive. And of course, when you have 2 years on a waiting list to open a business and a lot of loops and hoops, as someone decides to open a business, there's an option. Either you do everything we're doing, do everything by the book, wait for 2 years, or you pay someone under the table to make things go faster for you. So the heavier the bureaucracy, the heavier the taxation, the heavier or the bigger the state, the more corruption there will be and more payment under the table. That also adds to your cost of your products and services, and therefore makes very difficult for you to compete. So we look at what nourishes, at what prevents a nation from thriving, or what's the cause of poverty in a nation. Now let's look at what nourishes wealth. Now, my definition of wealth is freedom to trade. Absolute freedom to trade, to me, is the wealthiest thing that it can be. And that is what's required for wealth to occur, or for anyone to escape poverty, is to have the ability to trade freely, is to have the ability to produce goods and services, or offer goods and services, and have the market decide if your products are good or not, and therefore allow you to buy and sell, get jobs, open businesses. So the more freedom there is to trade, the more wealth there is. And here is something that I'm saying, and it's not my definition. If you look at Austrian economics, they say that what is necessary for wealth to exist is freedom to trade, or voluntarily exchange also is another definition for this. As much as we can have voluntarily exchange, the easier it is and the more wealthy we become. Now, once we become free to trade, the second ingredient is trust. So as we are free to trade, we're going to trade with people. Some of those trades are going to go really well. Some of those trades are going to be not going well because someone is not trustworthy. So we're very quickly in a place where it's free to trade, very quickly you find out who is the most trustworthy person that you can trade with, or group of people that can trade with, and that trust really speeds things up. A lot of people don't realize this, but just for you to be able to turn on a switch on your house and have the light goes on, a lot of people don't realize how much trust there must be in order for you to just be able to turn on that switch and have the light go on. I ask people to really think about that, something really simple. Imagine all the infrastructure that must be in place in order for you to go to a wall on your home, switch the lights on, and the lights go on. And when you see how much infrastructure is there and how much trust is required for all those parties involved, you start to see the importance of trust in a way to nourish wealth or to provide good trade. And of course, on individual level, the best way to become wealthy is to verify your mindset and your relationship with money. So most people are culturally on a zeitgeist, on a modus operandi around the world where we are kind of guided to have a very negative relationship with money. So once you fix your mindset in terms of your relationship with money, also your mindset in terms of believing it is possible to escape poverty, believing it's possible to become a millionaire, believing it's possible for you to be able to do better than the previous generations behind you. Once you have a dream and you believe that dream is achievable, you are on a much better mindset, in a much better place to be able to escape poverty and to become wealthy. Another thing that really nourishes wealth, and this is individual and also, of course, also for a nation, is savings. It doesn't matter how much money you make, it really matters how much money you can keep. And savings is required on individual level and also for nations to thrive. So if a nation is spending a lot more than what it makes, or spending everything that it makes, that nation is not going to be able to escape wealth. Savings is the second ingredient. Once you have all the ability to trade and you have a good mindset and there's trust established across trading, then savings will be the next thing. Like, you can always look for ways to save, and the more you save, the more you're going to be able to make investments, and the more prepared you're going to be to take advantage of certain opportunities. So saving is extremely required in order for you to escape poverty and become wealthy. And in terms of nations and individual, if you save and you invest on means of productions, and means of productions is whatever make a human being labor more productive. So we have one example here of means of production, which is not very sophisticated. It's just using 2 cows to prepare the soil. Now, if that human being would have to do that by hand, it would be taking a lot longer and a lot more effort. But once you use 2 cows to pull the gear that's going to prepare the soil, that makes the job easier. And of course, a tractor like this is much more efficient than the 2 cows. However, this individual must have saved some money or save some surplus of productivity in order to have access to 2 cows and then be able to produce a bit more. And of course, by doing that in a loop, saving and enhancing the means of production, eventually this person, maybe in his lifetime or future generations, will be able to buy a bigger machinery. And when you look at nations that are wealthy and nations that are poor, such for instance as India and Germany as a good example, if you look at India, this is what people look like in India. That's what a farm look like in India. It's cows putting some kind of gear to prepare the soil. However, if you look at Germany or Europe or Netherlands, you see more equipment like this. You don't see much of equipment like this in India. So a nation that has more complex means of production tends to be a more wealthy nation. And I use Germany because Germany owns the largest and the most complex means of production that we have known in the world, which is this one. It's the largest digger available on Earth. So just have an idea of how big that digger is. I think it takes only 15 people to operate. And you imagine 15 people being able to do this massive work in a day or a few hours. So there is no way that 15 people will be able to achieve this. So this means of production really enhance the productivity of a few individuals. And the more that enhancement occur, the more sophisticated the means of production, the better and the wealthier the nation will be. So this was a brief explanation on how I see poverty and what I see as the cause of it and the ways to escape or to be able to acquire more wealth. From now on, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and let you guys express yourself, your points of view or your questions. And again, if you do need any more education regarding crypto economics, feel free to contact us. We do have a Crypto Academy, also provide coaching 101. And now is the time for Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and talking to you guys. So, how was it? Hey, welcome, Maria. Good to see you here. Magnus, everyone is quiet. We have Laurie here and Fuzzy. I have something on the chat. Okay, nothing there. So can you guys hear me? Okay, feel free to unmute. Should we read the opinion of everyone last week and see what about Margarita?
Yes, sure. Okay, so Didier said it was education. Evelyn, I think she's not here, right?
Yeah, so here's the thing though, there is a video that I watched, and that video is what inspired me to make this presentation. And we're gonna put that link to that video on the chat so you guys can have it. We're also gonna post this on our Facebook group. And here's the thing. There is a discussion between Jordan Peterson and someone from Africa. And he asked her about, Jordan Peterson talks about education being the cause of poverty. She said, listen, in my country, there's a lot of people with high degrees who are working on the streets selling juice. Okay. I know in Brazil, a lot of people with very high degrees who are driving Uber. So yes, education, it is a factor, but further on the further end, there's all these other things that even though if you have education, you are unable to trade due to like heavy regulations. So according to her, she traveled, this woman, I forgot her name, she traveled from Africa to Germany, and she couldn't believe that in the town that was the first time she came out of her village, she came to Germany to get educated. Her family saved some money and sent her to get a better education. She couldn't understand why Germany had pavement. In her village, there was no pavement. And then she started to ask the question, why is this country having this easy life? And she gave an example of how it was for her to take a shower. And she said, to take a shower, I had to take boiled water on the stove. And the stove was literally some stones on the ground where they're gonna make a fire. And then with that fire, put a can of water. When the can of water was boiling, they would pour that hot water in another bigger container, and then they would walk to a place for the shower, and then she's going to be bathing. And she never understood how in Germany, when a blink of an eye, you just open 2 valves and you have the water on the temperature that you want coming. So she was really shocked with all this easiness of life, and she started to ask the question, why is Germany wealthy and why is my country poor? And then she kind of, it's an hour and a half video And what I try to explain here, and I agree with her a lot, with a lot of what she said, like, she inspired me to do this presentation, and she talks about it's not education. There's a lot of people with very high degrees that are unable to trade, they're unable to get a job, or they have to be, I met many people in Brazil with high degrees driving Uber. So does it make sense to you? What was the other opinion, Margarita, that we had there on?
Opinion of Evelyn, lack of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Georgie said lack of responsibility.
Okay, so let me comment on that. The greatest of all resources. Can someone tell me what is the most valuable resource that we have on Earth? Nothing can replace it.
Time.
That's it, Georgie. The human mind. The human mind is the largest of all resources. Once you have the right mindset and you're creative, believe me, I have been in a desert in the northeast of Brazil, and you'll be amazed how those people have no problem. And again, in the northeast is so far from government and police to come that all that exists there is free trade, because it's just too far and there's not enough roads to get to those areas. You'll be amazed at how people trade freely and how wealthy they are with like very little state, and how creative they are in the middle of the desert to find resources and to make things happen. I remember when I was a kid, for instance, I found wires. I went to the backyard of a telephone company, which back then was state owned, and they just threw those little pieces of wire that they are no longer using for the telephone line. And what I did is I started to braid bracelets, and I started to sell that on the streets, you know. Margarita have a friend who's in northeast of Brazil just drawing on the beach and making money. So the greatest resource is the human mind. What was the other opinion, Margarita?
Nitilia said skills.
Yes.
Nitilia, yeah.
Skills is a very big role indeed.
Linda, perceived helplessness.
Yes, and again, mindset. But I think we'll touch on that here.
Marcus, mindset.
Yes.
Renata, fear or greed.
Yes.
Devi said also fear.
Mm-hmm.
Noala, lack of education. Maria, dreams, pursuits, courage.
Yes. Can you comment on that, Maria? Since we're here, give a bit more comment on that.
You know what? You're so right about being given the opportunity. And when I was living, and when I thought about all this, because I've been thinking for a week, I thought, no, it's opportunity. Canada had and still has a lot of opportunity. And when I was living in Europe, and studying there. I left Europe. I was there 10 years. I loved it to death, but I knew I didn't have the opportunities that I had in Canada or North America as a woman and as a business person, right? So that's why I returned. And I was right about that. Now, my brother and my sister are still living there. They have their own business and everything. And you know, like they have their own business, so they have the opportunity, but it's not the same freedom as you have over here, that you can open up more than one business and you can go in different directions. And you know what? For myself as a baby boomer, we had a lot of opportunities as women, even that a lot of people don't have now, maybe, or they're not embracing it, or whatever else is going on with what's going on with the government over here. I don't like what Trudeau's doing here at all. So there's going to be less and less opportunities, as you know, with the Freedom Convoy as an example, right? And now that they've decided that you can only buy $30,000 worth of I'm going to say shit coins, right? So you're okay to buy Bitcoin as much as you want, but you can't buy more than 30,000. It's just a new law that came in right now, and that's in certain provinces. And there again, they're closing the window for people who are losing the opportunity. So absolutely, the opportunity is the key word.
Oh, thank you. Laurie, how are you? It's been a while. I'm assuming you're the Laurie that I know.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Boef.
Great to have you here, Laurie.
Thank
Fantastic
you.
to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I loved your talk. I'm at work, so I'm moving around. Unfortunately, I can't go on camera, but thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be in your rooms.
Okay, Laurie, I send you a link. So our events are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at exactly the same time. So I think I sent you the link for Thursdays and Tuesdays. Thursdays and Tuesdays is the academy. I would love to have you there with us, maybe tomorrow or some other day. So just let me know when you'd like to join, and I would love to have you there. Thank you for being here, Laurie.
Okay, I'll definitely look for the email for Tuesday or Thursday. And
I think I sent you on the
it,
back channel. I think I sent you on the back channel, but I think you also have an email. Can you include her on the Crypto Vagabonds Academy email, Margaret, so she can get the link?
Yeah,
That would be
sure.
fabulous.
okay, thank you.
For people who do not know, I know Laurie for since last year. Eventually, sometimes some months ahead is going to be a year that I met Laurie. Laurie was on Crypto CE on Clubhouse. I know her from there, and she does a fabulous work. Though she actually feeds people on a daily basis. I know it's not about. Can you just in 1 minute talk about what you do, Laurie? Because I find it's an incredible work what you do, though.
Sure. So excited to be here, guys. Excited to be learning alongside you. Boef is an incredible teacher. But what I do, I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia, actually just outside of Atlanta. And I have a 501c3 that I founded almost 20 years ago. And we have a food pantry. It's actually the largest partner agency with the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And we feed approximately 1,200 families a week. We have 3 different events. So we open to the public on Saturdays, and we typically feed the bulk of our people with groceries at that time. We have about 800 to 850 families that pass through. On Tuesdays, we deliver to 8 senior HUD housing. So these are seniors that live below the poverty level, and they qualify for subsidized housing. Most of them don't have transportation, so we have to deliver the food to these senior citizens. And that's what we do on Tuesdays. And then on Thursdays, we have adopted schools that are what you call Title I. Title I qualifications, it's for schools where the majority of the students are on free or reduced lunch, which means that the families are struggling financially. So we have 3 schools that we have adopted, and the social workers of the schools identify the families that are most at risk, and we send what's called a weekend backpack home with these kids to tide them over with food Friday, Saturday, Sunday until they get back to school on Monday. So that's what we do, and just excited to be here. Thank you, Boef.
No, thank you. I just find it fabulous the work that you do. And if anyone here ever wants to open like a nonprofit, that's what she meant by those long codes. If you want to know how difficult it is or what loops to jump in the US, I would say contact Laurie. She knows it all. Thank you for being here, Laurie. Appreciate your presence. So what else is on the comments on the cause of poverty, though?
Manas, sacrifice, improper planning of resources.
Yeah, those are very good. Yeah.
And mad, lack of vision and belief.
Okay, but I want to go back to Manas because the word economy literally means household management. That's all that it means. So yes, poor management of resources means poor economics, and therefore that will cause more poverty. What else was there next after Manas?
Yeah, the last one is mad, lack of vision and belief.
Yeah, I think that's for an individual person. If you have lack of vision and lack of an ability to believe that you can do something, that is also another cause. And on that note, like the reason why I asked Nora to speak is because I do believe there's a lot of families and a lot of teenagers or young adults that are going to school and they're unable to be well fed and therefore unable to get proper education. I think what Laurie does kind of gives a better chance for those kids or those young adults that she's feeding to have a better access to education, therefore possibly escaping poverty. Because I can understand sometimes like your basic need, which is food, is not met, like food and water and shelter. If those needs are not really met, it's very hard for you to think or have dreams. So I think initiatives like Laurie kind of also contribute to helping those less privileged to escape poverty. Thank you, Laurie, for being here on this very kind of, I would say, favorable moment, like very conveniently here, like for us to have you here doing this kind of work that helps other people to escape poverty as well. I appreciate that, though.
I totally agree with what you just said, Boef. Research has shown that when children are hungry, they don't pay attention in class. They don't have the capacity to. So from a child's perspective, it's very important that we make sure that they're fed. So, yeah.
Wow. And one thing you should know, Laurie, because it's your first time on the Crypto Talk, you're going to receive an email with a link so you can have a one-on-one conversation again. Natalia, we also have here Fuzzy, Michelle. What do you think, Michelle? What is the cause of poverty and what do we need to thrive? Michelle? Maybe she cannot unmute herself. Fuzzy, any contributions, any ideas?
Good, just listening well.
Okay, he was on the Matrix. Marilda and family.
Hi. Yes, very interesting insight, Boef. And when you were talking, I was thinking about my country, Italy. And I started to think that all the, points that you were mentioning, I can find them, all of them in Italy, corruption, heavy regulation, high taxation, all of that. But most of all, I believe that the cause of poverty is corruption in the first place. That's what I see in Italy, because we have a lot of resources. But, corruption is a problem. Corruption and also very bad management. Because when you allocate most of the resources in one sector, for instance, in one industry, and forget totally about other sectors, other industries, then you are really doing a very bad management. So I would say, to me, corruption and bad management, those two, elements are the most important elements to cause poverty in a country. This, based on my experience, based on, my country, which is beautiful, but it's not working. It's, a lot of resources still not working. People are just leaving Italy. We are not in Italy anymore for these reasons, so.
Yeah, so again, if you look at what you just mentioned, right, the heavy regulation and corruption, the simpler way to say that that makes a nation poor is a heavy state. Like the bigger the state, the bigger the taxation, the more difficult it is for anyone to thrive. And again, the bigger the state, the more power they have to allocate resources where they see fit. Another thing that I see happening globally, it's not just with Italy. Of course, Italy maybe is ahead of the curve. I grew up with my ancestors and grandparents being very self-sustainable. Like there was we never took loans. Like loan was something that we took from neighbors or close friends or family members. And loans were normally like my family wants to purchase something and they have, let's say, 90% of the money and they're just missing 10%. And they would borrow and say, I pay you in 3-4 months. There was never like years on end on loan. I learned with myself, like if you have money, you buy it. If you don't have the money, you don't buy it. I remember my grandfather saying to me, the most expensive thing that there is in the world are things that people say is for free. Like my grandfather run away from whatever was for free. Like if it's for free, it's too expensive. I can't afford it. Now, what I see happening in the world today if I go to places like Argentina and other places that are like really poor, we have this tendency, globally speaking, where there's 3 or 4 generations of people who are dependent on the state. Is the state helping them with because they have kids? Is the state helping them with extra this? Is a state helping them with that? And that's passing generation to generation. So like, for instance, if my parents were, for instance, my ancestors were people that were benefiting from the state, that's what I would know how to do and what to do. And that's what I would be able to do. But because my ancestors were not dependent and they never want anything for free, that's what I passed on. So I think, and this is a behavior that I see globally increasing, where people are really becoming heavily dependent on the state handouts. And whenever there's a problem, how can the state save me? And I think that is one massive cause of an economical crisis. And like, we're going to start to feel like, globally speaking, the world is going to start to feel poor, much poorer after this crisis, which we're about to experience now. And I think Italy is another country that also gives all these handouts, like Greece, for instance. Does it happen in Italy as well, Mariuda?
Well, not sure, because you cannot really rely on government or on things to actually live. For instance, for anything, like I don't know, you have kids, you know, and I know that theoretically, many governments, including Italy, give you money to support the newborn babies, right? People are trying in certain, you know, other countries, maybe try to make a lot of kids. They do kids, they have kids in order to have this support, okay? That thing doesn't happen in Italy. You cannot rely on that because it doesn't work. You will never get that money. Even if you want to do that, you know, you will never get access to that money. And anyway, if you get those money, it's ridiculous. The amount is ridiculous. So that's not true. I mean, we don't have, I believe, as Italians, these tendencies to rely on government, because we know that the government fails us always.
Okay.
So I cannot see that. I cannot really see that. The problem is, for instance, that we pay a lot of taxation and we expect some services, but you cannot have those services. Or whenever they publish, you know, information about the financial law this year, the financial, I don't know, you know, they always say how they are investing money every year. That's the budget. We are doing this, this. You see that they don't invest in schools, research, young people, never. They are investing in how to save the bank, how to save the national industries. Fiat, which is the automobile biggest, you know, industry, just left Italy. You know, the government tried to support Fiat for decades, but then they left. The same thing with Alitalia, which is our, you know, so the government puts money there, but because of corruption, those entities cannot really get those money anyway, and then eventually they leave the country and take all the capital. Fiat now is in Netherlands and US. Alitalia died. You know, all these big companies supported by the government
are leaving the country now.
Left already the country. So you see what I mean? You cannot really rely on government. We know that. We know that. Nobody is relying on countries.
That's a very good point. But I'm curious here, is it me or on your country you see the difference between generations being more dependent on the government? Like Didier, what do you experience?
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, here in France, in the contrary to Italy, Marilda, I think, at least for now, the government, it's still working pretty well. And I'm actually right now, since the pandemic, having been not living in France for over 30 years, having to come back because I was in a tourist trade. And now in some government plan for another 200-300 days, I think. I have to say that for now it's working. But in the long run, I am actually personally not really convinced that that has nothing to do with specifically only France or Italy, that there is so, that people are so dependent on the government. I think it's like taking a drug in the long run, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, the drug is taken away, and you don't really know where to look. But on the other hand, what is actually still also, you see, I was also listening to Lori and the food banks in the States, and I'm aware that, I mean, it is something that is working and working well in the States. It is also something which is happening in France. We call it over here les restaurants du cœur. They are not working, I think, the whole year, but as soon as it gets colder, they are. So what I'm trying to say is that over here, it is, I think, it is working still well, but for how long? And I guess, I mean, I remember having an answer last week with education when I was listening to each and everyone giving his or her answer. At the end, I was telling myself, well, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit from everything. But what I was actually not really also looking at, Boef, when you were asking the question, is that I think you're taking the view from 1,000 foot down. And I can definitely say from myself that I was having my view from, my little quarter of the planet where I am. And it is interesting to see, for instance, the hunger of getting knowledge. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of friends close living about 5K from here who adopted 2 girls from India 10 years ago. And I remember when these 2 girls came over, they were like 4 and 6. And these 2 girls right now, they're 2 pearls, and they've learned so much. And then again, when I see kids over here who actually, where the knowledge is so easy to actually get and who don't show the same interest. So I still have a mixed feeling. And again, thank you for your explanations at the beginning, Boef. All makes sense because first guilty, I'm probably seeing it or have seen it first from my own eyes. But yeah, we definitely have to have a much bigger view on the whole subject. And I mean, I take my hat off, Lori, for the work you are doing at your end in Atlanta. And I don't know, we have to find a way, each and everybody of us, to put a hand in there to make this world a better place.
Yeah, no, I think you saw education because education is what like help these 2 kids, that you say. But I have, for instance, discussion with more people, like, and I'm gonna speak something here, like, which maybe, and again, it's gonna be on the record. I gotta be sincere. So, for instance, I have been in Italy and have been in Europe, and there was a time where there was this migration from Syria, people crossing the sea, and I have always had like some Afro-descendant friends. There's one thing about Afro-descendants, and I think like we always see each other as brothers. Like if I see Afro-descendant person, I immediately call him brother, and there's this sense of closeness without us having ever met. And I have heard this complaint, like, oh, it's lack of education. Say, man, you have a phone, you have more computational power in your pocket than NASA had when NASA put the man on the moon. Most people don't realize this. There's more computational power on the palm of our hands, on the palm of a 13-year-old today, than the entire computational power of NASA when NASA put a man on the moon. And I say, man, after YouTube, very few people can complain about education or lack of access to information. There is Wikipedia. There is so much information for free, so much knowledge. I never went to school, so I was never interested in school. I look for things that interest me, and that's how I educate myself. So I think access to education, it is no longer a valid argument. I think there's something else, because there's no information. Let's put it, 95% of all information one can desire or imagine, it is at their fingertips today. But I see people spending their time looking at picture of cats or funny videos and not really using their time the best. So that's one thing that I always say to my Afro-descendant friends, like, oh, I don't have education, didn't have access to information. It's like, on your pocket is any book that you can possibly desire to read. It's any information that you can desire. There's a video explaining things to you. So I think the mindset also is another thing on individual level. And of course, those kids coming from an environment where they didn't have it, now they have it, they're going to make more advantage of it. And while most people have in their pocket, they just ignore it, you know. But I wonder what Magnus has to say about this whole thing as well. I like to hear like voice of wisdom of those who are being on Earth a bit longer than us. Go, Magnus.
Thank you very much, Boef. I totally agree with you regarding the definition of poverty and non-poverty. I was thinking about the history of this country. I live in Sweden. And 150 years ago, Sweden was one of the poorest countries in Europe. People starved to death. Now we are one of the richest. What's happened in the time in between? We have had education, deregulation, and everything you sort of pointed out as the basis for making it possible for people to grow. And so I can start a business in seconds. I just start trading and it's a business. It's not illegal. And I can get the education, and we have an education system that apart from YouTube, etc., you can get quite a lot of education, even at my age, for free. And all that is wonderful, and it works splendid. But that's because I'm a native Swede. If I was an immigrant, it's just about the opposite. I can't even take a job because I have to have certain papers, and etc., etc., etc. And today we have quite a lot of refugees from Ukraine complaining, we don't want to sit here receiving small money, we want to work. And that's prohibited. So, well, it's a split vision here. That said, I totally agree with your definition. And it has also been very, very interesting to hear the experience from other countries around the world. This is very rewarding to listen to those evenings here. So thank you, all of you. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Magnus. I feel really glad to hear you saying about the Ukrainian refugees, because the same thing happened in the Netherlands. They bring the refugees, they put them in camps, which I honestly, I call it prison, because they cannot really leave that camp. And if they manage to leave that camp, they again cannot work. If you take from people the ability to trade, to produce something, you're condemned them to poverty. It doesn't matter where they are on Earth. They can be on Europe, they can be on Switzerland, they can be in Singapore, they can be anywhere on Earth where it is a wealthy nation. But if you can't trade, then you're sentenced to poverty. I see. If I ever had any power, like I would say, any nation that allows everyone to trade can only benefit more. I think this view of, oh, if they get jobs, then there's no job for the men. Allow people to trade, and things will blossom. People are going to be innovative. People are going to be creative, and there's no way for poverty to prevail. But I feel sad to see that Sweden is on the same boat as Netherlands. Netherlands makes it impossible for any immigrant to trade, to work, or to be productive. So that is a very, I would say, uncomfortable and very unfriendly place to be, though. Part of me feel like maybe I'd rather be on a war zone than in a place where I'm unable to trade, though. At least on the war zone, I'll be able to trade or do something. Because take away my ability to trade, and I'm sentenced to that, though. Go ahead, George.
Can't trade.
You can what?
You can't trade if you're dead.
That's true. Go ahead, Georgie.
Yeah, in terms of the people from Ukraine, we had quite a few here in our community and in Bulgaria as well, because probably the first stop to Western Europe was Romania and Bulgaria. But it seems that, you know, it's not just social living houses. We were giving them our houses as well, like not me in particular, but if we have a vacant home in the neighborhood, we would give it to them, and people would go and give them anything they need to start. And nobody here said that they cannot work, but the people from Ukraine said that they won't work in Bulgaria because they cannot trade their value as high as they want. So they're gonna wait for the next, how do I say? When they have an opportunity, they would go to Germany, Netherlands, and other countries in Europe that can work for better money.
Salary.
Yeah.
I see.
And we're okay with that, and we're okay with if they want to work, but it's just their choice. So
yeah, you have the other side of the coin as well, huh, George?
yeah, I think that because the government knows that they won't have the opportunity to get what they want here. That's why they don't do the step to ban them not to work or something like that.
Just out of curiosity, what is the average wage in Bulgaria? Like, if someone has, like, by average I mean like people cleaning houses, being maids in a hotel.
Well, the average is about 900 euro, but the minimum is about 350 euro, something like that.
Okay.
But
Okay, so
keep in mind that in Bulgaria, there is a lot of gray area. You know, not all the people who work they say they get the minimum wage.
I know it's unofficial. I know
Yeah.
it's unofficial. Brazil has the same issues. Like what you have on the books in Brazil, we call the cashier tool. We have the first cashier, which is all the things on the books, and then there's the cashier tool, which you negotiate with your boss.
The same in Russia.
On the same.
Usually we don't get a lot of things from the government and the country, so whatever you get, you're responsible for everything you get. So it's better for you not to, how do I say, not to overpay the government or just waste money to them. Yeah.
Wow.
So
thank you.
At this point, there is a lot of gray area here.
Yeah, this is the thing on the Balkans. I was in Bulgaria though. I really loved, and I also have to say that the cost of living is very much lower compared to the rest of Europe as well. So go ahead, Margarita. We are just about the hour.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this topic. It's interesting that we started talking about it. I mean, about Ukrainian refugees. This morning I was talking to my mom. She is in Turkey at the moment, and she met a woman there who is from Estonia, but she is Russian speaking because of her parents. But she grew up, she was born in Estonia. And she said that they have a lot of refugees from Ukraine who are getting money from the government every month. And because nobody expects her to understand them, you know, she goes with her kids in the playground and she sees them going with their children, and they don't expect her to understand, so they're talking freely. And she's saying, I'm hearing conversations like, why should we go to work if we're getting money from the government? Or why should we move to Germany? Germany is not giving anything to us, so we will just stay here. We are being paid. They're giving us hotels. That's where they are staying. So why should we do anything? So I think and it's not about Ukrainians. I think it's just maybe the category of people who just don't want to do anything. As Didier was saying, you get this as drugs, and then you just so used to it, so you don't want to do anything.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not sure.
no, I think there's
the same
that.
thing.
So,
You know, the same thing happened with them. You know, when the conflict in Crimea started, we had refugees in our city. That's what my mom was telling me, and they were living in a hotel in our small city for like forever. They were being fed, they were being paid by the government. Russia offered them passports. So you are like, you have full rights as citizens. Go and start working, settle down, have your life. If you don't like that city, move. Here are tickets for you. Go anywhere you want. They just didn't want to do anything. They preferred to just stay and just, you know, get paid for doing nothing.
But I think that is not an issue of the people though, like their nature. I think it's a lot to do with game theory. Like, you create an environment, and that's what I was saying about I see the globe, people become more and more dependent on the government. I think it's just game theory. If you have something for free, why are you going to work for it? And we see the consequence of that also with the COVID, where in the US, they gave all this helicopter money to people. And now what that did is that increased the price on labor. Like I remember there was a time where McDonald's was paying $100 for anyone that showed up for an interview. So in order for you to get people off their homes and go to work, you got to pay them.
Stop paying them.
If you stop paying, then the price of labor comes down. But if you're paying them an X amount, why would they move on and try to get more or less? There's a higher pay. So I think most of the people will follow whatever game theory is there, and there of course will be exceptions of people that will say, okay, I can take this check for this much time and I'm gonna go and do something else. There are people like my grandpa who like, I don't want anything for free, I want to be able to work. So there's exception, but in general, the majority of people will go on whatever the game theory sets by default. I think that so it's not something like Ukrainians or Russians or
no, of course not. No.
It's a game theory.
That's not what I meant. No, it's just the situation is with them at the moment. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Wow.
Can I just say one more thing?
Please go ahead, George. Go ahead.
Because in Eastern Europe, there was a time that there was the socialist time, and people still remember how the government was taking care of everything and how they used to, like, people, let's say my grandparents or my grandparents, they would remember and they would say, you know, back then it was so easy to live. Now you have to fight for everything. And people still have this dream, you know, this like that it was better, and they didn't have to do so much that we're doing right now. But I think it was a little bit irresponsible, you know, from their side and from the government side. Well, nothing good happened, so it was not the right thing.
Thank you, George.
You're muted, Boef.
I noticed something. So thank you for that. It's a very good thing. Also, I was in the Balkans, and there's always this like some people who love the socialist time and people who don't like it, and that is a division there. So I'm curious, Laurie, how was it for you, this conversation here today? And it's the first time on our crypto talk, and then we can just call it a day. I think she's working. So anyway, we are 4 minutes over the hour. We kind of start just 5 minutes past due to my inability to deal with technology. I'll call it a day. Thank you very much for everyone being here. On the last Wednesday of the month, when is that going to be? Is this month? We're going to have a last Wednesday, or is it next?
Yes, yes, you will. Yes,
Yes.
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 We have a fifth.
yes.
We have a fifth Wednesday, right? So not last,
Yeah.
fifth Wednesday.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
on the fifth Wednesday, we're going to have a gathering here. We can discuss more about this cause of poverty or what states should nourish wealth. So I think the discussion we can have on our social gathering on the fifth Wednesday of the month. So thank you, guys. I see you either tomorrow on Clubhouse or Friday on Clubhouse or next week.
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laurie. And look for the email. We're going to send you a link so we can have a one-on-one call. Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, Boef. Bye-bye now.